Thanks. Well, my presentation is about my land art project, Coronaflowers. And now it's not one. My name is Geert. I'm 47, Dutch, and that means that I'm not able to cope both up in the speed or the English level that the Hereford students do, unfortunately. So I will sometimes have to seek for words. I'm trained as a metal worker and then a mechanical engineer to a master level. I moved to Sweden in 2013, actually as a life-changing life-changing event, because then I became a self-taught metal artist. I do mostly art and crafts objects according to upcycling, and I would call myself a modern post-grit or a modern metal worker. I don't do forging. So I weld, I grind, and I cut. That's the basics of what I do. And I make art. And the difference for me between the arts and crafts objects is that they're repetitive and the art is like unica. So prior to the flowers I made, in February 2020, all of a sudden we had Corona, COVID-19. And in the Netherlands, my brother's father-in-law died very hastily and suddenly in Corona. And what I heard through my brother was that it was a chaos in the hospital. They didn't know how to handle. They didn't have the gear. That was the reason I made this work. And well, making spheres is like my standard arts and crafts great thing to do. So I made this one to show that we're distanced from another and we have the skulls, the danger, the life-threatening danger. And then I thought I was ready with Corona. It was finished. The problem was that shortly after Corona really came to Sweden. Until this point, we actually thought in Sweden that we could just get rid of it through through control. But we weren't, unfortunately. So a while later, there was a lot of talk about death toll. Every day there was the death toll numbers in Sweden. There was death toll numbers in Italy, in Spain. So I had a hard time taking in these numbers. My wife is a general practitioner. She knows what is common when you get influenza, how many people die of cancer, but there was no way to relate to the death toll of Corona. And this means that when I was driving towards an exhibition, actually, to be putting up my stuff, I realized that maybe tomorrow we have a stop in, how do you call it? When the whole society closes down. A lockdown, exactly. We might enter into a lockdown, and what's the use of putting up my stuff? But I was doing it anyway, and it was death toll on the radio again. And then all of a sudden I thought of all the war cemeteries you see, especially in Holland, but also when you travel around in both Germany and Belgium, with the rows and rows of crosses, and how that is a very effective way to show a number. And I was sort of irritated about the death toll number all the time. So what I did was, I thought, well, if I come home, I'll see what the death toll is in Italy and in Spain, which are the worst at the moment. And I will try to calculate if I can do that for Sweden, taking into account what the difference is in inhabitants in the different countries. So as an engineer, I sat down and calculated, watched on the website of the Swedish Health Authority, and they had a really nice update for the death toll for every day. So I thought by myself, I will take the flowers I make, basic, simple product I have as a light selling object, and I will put out one for each person that dies in Corona according to the Swedish Health Authority. So I will not put myself into if that number is correct or not, because there was a lot of discussion if that was correct. I would put them out there with no economic winnings, so no thought of selling, no other projects, no subsidy as well. And I wanted to start in a pattern that was 40 times 40 meters, 2 meters apart. And the 2 meters apart is the social distancing, which was already being talked about and partly coming into play. I started on the 3rd of April with the number of flowers I actually had at home as a normal stock for selling. And it was 333 flowers on the 3rd of April. Really interesting for me because it's really easy to remember. So this is the kind of flower which punch dye weight. So I mainly try to produce with industrial waste, and then the stem made of newly bought material. That's the basics of them. And as you can see here, this is a journalist, and these are the flowers. They are already not on a 2 meter distance, because very shortly after I decided to do this and put it out on my social media, the number increased. It went from a few per day to 30, 40, 60, 80, and upwards. This meant that people started showing up, both journalists, but also visitors, people who just read about it and wanted to see it for themselves. Actually, many of them thought I didn't do it in life. So, and the interesting thing about this whole work is that it is very intuitive. It just started. We didn't know where Corona would take us. I had no clue where this work would take me, actually. I have no thought when it stopped. My first thought was actually to put them at 2 meter distance and make the pattern bigger and bigger and bigger. But when the number got up so quickly, I realized that the field I had, which is about 2 acres, it wouldn't fit. So as Corona came closer into our lives, I started putting the flowers in between, like on a shorter distance, meaning that the disease was coming closer to us. What I forgot for us, if you have a question about this or there's something unclear, please ask, because I like to have a discussion and being things clear. And already here I got the idea, when will I stop? Because the madness was at a little later. This is a little later. It went up like 1,500 in a month. What should I do? How long will this continue? So I started thinking about when will I stop, but I had no clue actually. This is the summer. Here I had a clue. It became so many, and I was so occupied with making flowers that I didn't have the time to do other things. So I decided to stop when the pattern was fulfilled with flowers each half meter. So 81 times 81 flowers, that's 6,561. I didn't know when this would happen. The other interesting thing was that a lot of unexpected things happened. I got a lot of media attention, and I had a lot of people showing up. It was Corona. You weren't allowed to go to certain events, but these people just showed up. They put their car, and they just walked into my fields and looked at the work, basically. Some of them were people who just lost a relative, so who were there, well, having a hard time. But at the same time, I sometimes approached them and asked, and they felt that one of their relatives was in this field. But others were like families with teenage kids that didn't want to wash their hands if they visited their grandparents, and their parents were hoping that this would remind them that maybe they should. So it was really unexpected sort of show-ups. This is the winter time. Here the field actually is complete because we reached the number of 6,561 on the 27th of November. It was really hard for me to stop making flowers because this meant that the people dying after didn't get a place in my field, but I had to stop somewhere. And the reason was actually here in the summer, I decided to stop at a certain moment And I got a question from the municipality of Gothenburg if it was possible to rent the whole work and put it in the center of Gothenburg, which was a really, well, it felt like a really nice question. They wanted to have the work because the city would have been celebrating their 400th anniversary. But unfortunately, they were unable due to Corona, but they wanted to do something to commemorate and to think about the times that the celebration should have happened, because they decided to postpone the celebration. Then the funny thing was also that it was visible on Google Earth. It's mainly because the people walking around. This is my house workshop. This is where people park their cars, because I had to put up some signs. People were driving around everywhere. And here they went to see the field. And actually, because they were making their rounds, they made the field a little bigger. This is more than 40 times 40 meters. But, well, they sort of made an imprint in the landscape. Well, here I have why stop making. There's also a little fun fact, so a lot of unexpected things happened. One of the things I would like to share is that at some point I was listening to the radio in my workshop, making the flowers, and they were talking that Corona was influencing our lives, and it was sort of considering, no, it's not at all. I'm just working, and then I realized that I had hundreds of flowers in my workshop, a lot of material. It was like 7 days a week. It was my job. But I actually didn't connect to that anymore because I was occupied. I was happily doing something that meant something for society, even though it wasn't paid maybe. But the funny thing, I didn't connect to that Corona was a problem to me. The other funny thing that I noticed was that weekdays and weekends, they differ. More people died on weekdays. And that's actually basically because hospitals didn't take the time on the weekends to report the number. But I saw the numbers in how much I had to produce, which also was a funny and strange experience. I even have had negative numbers, so people got alive again. But it was because the Swedish Health Authority made miscalculations, so I had to get out and take out. That's a kind of unexpected things happening. I've also not faked, but how do you go on holiday when you have this project? So I actually had to produce ahead to have flowers that someone else put out, because I wanted, as I promised, that every day, 2 o'clock, someone would put out the number of flowers of people that died the day before. And the last one is that it was really hard to stop making them, actually, because you made them for 9 months in a row. It's hard to just leave it. But the next thing was in Gothenburg. Here is it's a barge. It was a municipality offered me this barge basically because they didn't want to have the problem with vandalism, and I thought it was a really nice idea. So the barge is smaller than the flag. I chose the Swedish flag because the flag is used a lot in Sweden. My project was about the number of people which died in Corona in Sweden. And because to have a contrast with the flowers, the problem is that in the after project, or after I showed this in Gothenburg, a lot of people actually didn't notice that it's flowers on there. They saw it, they read about it, but from a distance, they didn't recognize the flowers anymore. It was like one big, field or mass. You might recognize that there is a pattern here. And what I did was calculate ahead how many probably would have died when I put up this, so that they would have a place anyway. So printed in the yellow is flower heads of the people that probably would have died at the time, due to vaccination that already started to decline, fortunately. This was paid for. I must say that the municipality of Gothenburg was really generous in wanting me to have insurance, an artist fee, But they wanted the job turnkey, so they said to me, fix it, come with a price, and you can do the job. And well, it was an interesting part of the project. One really irritating thing was that I was not allowed to communicate this before, because the people working for Gothenburg municipality with this project were afraid that politicians would like to ban this, as Corona was anyway a little, well, leading to discussions, and if Corona was as dangerous. So what they did is that they said to me that I wasn't allowed to communicate this because they were afraid of their own politicians banning the project, basically. So I had to wait until 2 weeks before installing with saying anything about it. For me, it would have been a lot better if I could communicate the whole solution, because the 5,500 flowers rest on blue plates with small pipes to be able to install easily. So I had like weeks of works to preparate. This is installed in 2 days, the whole barge and everything. And some media and experiences. I should also have had an early exhibition in Gothenburg, which I discussed before this barge, but that was all of a sudden cancelled when they heard that it had to do with death toll and Corona. So if you ask me what does this have to do with the theme of this conference, if you did, I should have got an exhibition in a gallery in the middle of Gothenburg, but as soon as they heard that it had to do with death toll and Corona, no, wasn't possible. They didn't want to have such a negative exhibition, basically. Another thing was that local and national newspapers, they wrote about this. It was on local and national TV. It was on BBC website. It was on CBC, and even on Slovenia national TV. But the irritating thing for me was that I'm on BBC, let's look on their Facebook site and on their YouTube. At least 30% of the reactions was devastating to read. Let's say 60% was great, was promising, but people were happy about what I did. But reading, I would be totally, well, I don't know what you call it, but finding every way to just trying to destroy your artwork or comment on it in a way that's totally irrelevant. I stopped reading after maybe 50, and it's really hard to forget if you read those kind of input. So I thought in the beginning that it was really nice to be in big media, but honestly it's not. Not with this kind of sensitive exhibition. So that's an experience I rather forget. Well, what now? I've created a problem for myself. Everybody calls this a memorial of Corona or COVID-19 in Sweden, but nobody wants to have it. Nobody wants to own it. So it's in my barn now. And recently I've noticed that if it's not me trying to apply for money to put it somewhere, it will just not happen. I've applied on a lot of places, tried everything possible, but people don't want to know about Corona anymore, especially not about death toll. So actually I have a problem for myself now, how and what to do with this work. And that's basically a short presentation. I see myself as someone, because I work sustainable, trying to work on the world and weld instead of work with forging. Any questions?
Thank you first.
Are you making anything else this kind of conceptual before you?
Not on this level, no. Not on this land art level, and not this sensitive.
No.
And actually people have said when Gas happened, oh, you should do something. I'm hesitant, basically. But sometimes it's itchy and sometimes I would like to do something. Yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting. yeah, the way that people reacted to it, and particularly that kind of people adding to the work by walking around it. It's got so many different directions. I was wondering if like that was something you wanted to try to do again, or in a different way, or bring into what you did.
I would like, but without being repetitive, because it's not something you just want to do over and over again, especially not as this took 9 months unpaid. More questions?
Do you feel that that maybe you have harvested already this, because all of this media and this exhibition in Gothenburg, or you feel that it needs to go some more, or
Well,
to be finished? I mean,
yeah. Well, my idea in the beginning, after Gothenburg, was trying to get another exhibition or finding a final place. And actually, I would like to put it somewhere there. Rust will take care of the work. Even though I think metal should be recycled, it would be really interesting to just let it rust, and after a number of years, it's gone. We don't need the work anymore. But the problem is that all of the people that visit my workshop ask where the flowers are. So all the people that know about this, they wanted to have a final place, a permanent place. And that creates a problem for me, but because it's great making a work like this, owning it. I own the field, I own the place, I own the flowers. So there was no one I had to deal with, basically. But the problem is that it's also my work now. It's not the municipality or some organization. So I feel now at least I need to try to find a semi-permanent place to show it another 5-7 years, but not without being paid for it. I won't do it on my own field, because then I will become like a permanent memorial, and that's not why we bought a farm out in the country. So I will need to find a solution there.
Were you making flowers that look like that before this project?
Yeah. So I made those flowers just as basic, simple things people could buy.
Okay.
People still buy them, but now almost only as Coronaflowers.
I was not first. I think someone else was first.
I just got an idea that maybe you need to bury these flowers somewhere and put one single flower with text here is all the flowers have buried here and read in peace.
That's a nice idea as well. I was thinking
Up in peace, actually.
The funny thing, I have a lot of ideas, but where do you put it then? Even the one. I've talked with my own municipality that's funny enough says they want more tourist attractions year round, because we live in the area and we got a lot of crane birds that attract people. They were not interested. They tried to push it to other side, but they're totally not interested because it's too sensitive. I actually, during the project, I got a tip that in Stockholm they have a really nice park that's basically the there should my flowers do really well. I contacted them and they said, no, this is too emotional for the queen, for the royal house to be associated with. That was too sensitive. So it's really hard to find someone that wants this work, actually.
Yeah. And have you thought about just giving the flowers away to whoever walks by, just any person, perhaps if they were affected by the corona situation and when they perhaps have lost their loved one and want to like connect with the artwork on a.
I've been thinking about giving it to charity and like they selling it out. Problem is more or less who is a correct partner to do so. I've had contact with municipalities that only want the number of flowers that people that died in their municipality. But then I think you start to break up the work, and actually it will land with only those who have the money to have it, which feels wrong. I wanted to do the number for all Sweden. And selling them out, I have other flowers that are not in the work, so the whole work is still complete. It's 5 pallets this high. I have a big barn, and I make the same kind of flowers. And actually, quite often when people come and they ask if they can buy a flower because they lost a relative and they start unasked, they basically really with long stories about their relatives and how important the work was. Often they can just get a number of flowers from. I don't even sell them because it feels wrong, even though I sell them otherwise. But it's difficult to break it up or to give it away in the correct sense. I felt until now. Maybe if well, if it would be a national memorial, I could consider something like that. But that kind of question I've never had, unfortunately.
Yes.
You just spoke about breaking it up. Does that mean you're against the idea of these being separated at all? Like, could you see a situation sort of dispersing these just throughout Sweden, like sort of, you know,
absolutely.
rapidly?
But then throughout the whole of Sweden, or putting a number in each province, or some solution that is equal for the whole country, and not only those who have the money, and the rest will, well, be sold or cost. So I want a solution that works for the whole number of flowers.
So the way I look at this is like you gave yourself an assignment to create these flowers out of an emotional response to the situation, right?
Mhm.
So in a way, they fulfilled their purpose. You know, they helped you to go through this time. You know, so in a way, I also see they solved their purpose.
Mhm.
But and then even more happened, right? People responded to that, like more than you could have expected.
Mhm.
So in a way, for me, they've done their thing in a way. And the good thing is it also empowers you now also to push this now further. What could it become next? You know, maybe they don't have to live as a meadow of flowers. Maybe they can become the next level, become a gateway of transition or something like that. And you have that possibility too to do that with this material.
Well, actually, I've thought of compacting them to become a 3D work that's more in the air and smaller, because I've realized that the size makes it really hard to put them anywhere. I myself had problems when they were out in the meadow that the grass grows too high, so you have to go with your trimmer between the flowers. 40 times 40 rows, it's impossible. I had deer that went into the field and kicked about flowers. I have had bunnies hiding themselves. So that it's a really difficult artwork to maintain. I've thought about when you have concrete buildings in a city, you can drill 500,000 holes and have them on the side. But the problem is then you need to have some way to give it a next place. Actually, the barge in Gothenburg already was another way of showing them, and I've realized that they basically will be shown in another way than the original. But how? Well, it's difficult to just cancel the work now, I think.
You could bury them as an archaeological thing, you know, to document time, and you could sink them somewhere, you know. There are ways you could push it further for your own sake.
Yeah, but well, until now I have not found the way that suits
I know, I understand.
me, basically. More.
So if you find a final spot for it, or you find the field big enough, would you also make the flowers you didn't make yet? I don't know what the total number is.
I think Sweden stopped registering when we were at 22 or 24,000. If I get paid, yes. But unpaid, I don't know how much work that is, but I wouldn't be too happy doing it. But I would be interesting to complete the number in a way, yes. And the funny thing, the really funny thing with this is that I hear it with some people working with buying in lagen om offentlig upphandling.
Law of public, I don't know.
Well, if you publicly, if the institutions want to buy in art in a public way, there are rules in Europe how to deal with buying art. And this is an artwork that's already existing. Even if you change it to another work, it's really difficult because everybody has to get the same chance. And if I would apply for example, for a memorial, this is already existing. So I'm also in between. This is not a new artwork. It's existing. So trying to find money to show this is actually quite hard because it's not a usual way of making art if you already have something.
Maybe we should make this kind of a harvest party. You can plant them, and then you can invite all us over. We are taking all cordless angle grinders. And this will be a wonderful act of like a community building. Make something like this together. So I think there is very interesting.
There is possibilities. I like the idea.
Then it has to be on a field, still grown, because from a pallet.
Now from a pallet it's boring. But I've even thought about melting them into something other. But then the question is what? But the most irritating for me is that nobody asked the question. I have to come with it myself. And I would have, if it should become a permanent memorial, it needs a place. And the place is the hardest because I don't want it at my place. And actually, I've now discussed with both my municipality and with a nature park that's really nearby. And everybody's saying, no, not we. Even if I say I will maintain, no. So it's in a way really sensitive because it is about death, it is about Corona, which we all want to forget. So it's difficult to, well, the basics is maybe that I have to find the solution myself anyway. Someone else is not going to do it for me, unfortunately. But I'm happy that you want to help. There's someone in the back there as well.
Yeah. Have you maybe talked as the Swedish Health Association? Because it looks like they are part of it, that you were looking there.
I've tried to send them some emails, but without having any answer to them, and would be absolutely interesting. Actually, what I noticed have contact with a lot of Swedish institutions, that is that the first thing they will say, that is not within our framework. That is not our, that is not what we do. It's
Somebody else's problem.
yes, they also do like, no, it's not we. But I might, before this presentation, I actually went through my daybook of notes that I have. I think I emailed and made calls to 150 different persons and institutions to try to find places. And I'm a little tired as well, actually. That's why I decided now to look into getting European funding for showing this in the countryside as a new sort of artwork that would connect the different, what do you call it, rural areas in Sweden. That's where I'm at now.
It was kind of the same thing for the iron roses in Norway that the problem put together. It was 1,000 roses, and they were made, and it was where shall this be? It was several places in Oslo town that was up to speak, and then turned down because maybe of the same reason. Now it's sad. We don't want this sad thing in this beautiful park or this place. So it was a real struggle for 8 years. But then
to find a place,
the church took a place outside.
Well, I'm not surprised actually.
No, it was a struggle.
Sad to hear. Any more questions or?
Can I just
Okay, sorry.
well, just to follow up on what Heiner is saying, so if I understood this, you did this for you initially, right?
Good question.
You did this for you initially, yes? And then it became meaningful for people who came to visit it. And I think the difference between those pictures where you showed it from the perspective of having walked through the field as opposed to on that barge, radically different viewing experience. But now I'm wondering what is it that, if you started it for you, I think it's a fascinating project, don't get me wrong, but why is it now so important that it have a permanent home? Because it has done what it was supposed to do. It connected people. it affected people, people came, people did what they needed to do relative to mourning their deceased, right, that died of corona. So what is it that now impels you to try and find it a permanent home? Like, what would it do now?
Well, I think it's mainly because all of the people telling me that they would like to see it again and that they wanted to find a permanent place.
Okay,
I've actually thought about putting out that if I don't get help putting it in a permanent place, it will be destroyed and see what happens.
right.
Because hopefully some of the people who like this work want to put in some effort or maybe are in a position to do something.
Right, okay.
So, but basically it's because I feel guilt. It's the same when I stopped making the flowers, it felt really wrong. It was like the ones dying the day after, but I've never seen one of the people who died, or I've said their relatives. I met them and talked to them, and maybe that's why I have a feeling of needing to do something. Probably is. Thanks a lot for so many questions.